When Adrian first downloaded the dating app, he was certain that his life was about to change. The advertisements promised love, excitement, and endless possibilities, all within a few swipes. His friends told him that everyone was on it and that real relationships were born there every day. The glossy photos, the carefully written bios, and the bright notifications all felt like an invitation into a world that seemed larger, prettier, and far more thrilling than the quiet, ordinary life he lived. In reality, Adrian was shy, slightly awkward in conversations, and insecure about his looks, but none of that mattered online. On social media, he could choose the best angle, adjust the lighting, and write clever captions that made him appear wittier and more confident than he ever felt in person. He spent hours curating his profile. He picked a photo where his jawline looked sharp and his smile effortless, even though it had taken 30 tries in front of the mirror. His bio said he loved traveling, books, and spontaneous adventures, though most of his evenings were spent in his small apartment scrolling through videos or reheating leftovers. It was not that he was dishonest, it was just that the digital world encouraged exaggeration, and he convinced himself that everyone else was doing the same. The likes began to arrive. A few swipes matched. His heart raced each time the screen told him someone found him interesting. Conversations started, light, playful, filled with emojis and laughter that felt easy, because there was always time to think before typing. He matched with Emma, whose photos looked like they belonged in a magazine. Sunlit beaches, cocktails on rooftops, laughter in groups of stylish friends. Adrian felt a surge of pride when she responded to his messages. In their chats, he was bold, funny, and confident, and she seemed impressed. He couldn't believe someone like her would ever notice him. After a week of daily texting, they agreed to meet in person. He spent hours choosing the right shirt, rehearsing lines in his head, reminding himself to smile naturally. But when Emma walked into the cafe, the reality didn't match the fantasy. She looked less like the glowing figure from her posts and more like a tired, distracted girl scrolling through her phone even while they spoke. Her laugh was shorter, her eyes less bright, and Adrian found himself fumbling with words he had typed so easily. The silence between them stretched painfully. She glanced around the room more than she looked at him, and by the time they parted, he already knew what would come next. Later that night, he saw the notification, "Emma unmatched you." The rejection stung more than he expected. It wasn't just Emma, it was the collapse of the world he had imagined. He stared at her profile again, still glowing online, still smiling from beaches and rooftops, while the version he had met seemed like a stranger. He wondered if she thought the same about him, whether she compared the charming texter to the nervous man who couldn't hold her gaze. Determined not to give up, Adrian kept swiping. Each new match came with fresh hope. Each rejection chipped away at his confidence. Sometimes, girls stopped replying mid-conversation, their attention drifting elsewhere. Sometimes they promised to meet, but cancelled last minute. One evening he matched with Claire, who seemed genuine and kind in her texts. They spoke for weeks, late into the night, sharing secrets and stories that made Adrian believe he had finally found someone who saw beyond appearances. When he suggested meeting, she hesitated but eventually agreed. On the day of their meeting, Adrian waited at the restaurant for over an hour. His messages went unanswered. By the time he realized he had been ghosted, the humiliation sank deep. That night, Claire's profile vanished. The pattern repeated. Online, he was desirable, liked, and occasionally adored. Offline, he was ignored, rejected, or forgotten. The contrast was dizzying. He started to feel as if he lived two different lives. One where he was the confident man in curated photos, and another where he was just Adrian, stumbling through conversations, never enough to hold anyone's attention. But he wasn't alone in this. His friend Maya, who often complained about the endless stream of shallow messages she received, had her own version of the problem. Online, she was bombarded with attention, compliments, flirty lines, desperate attempts to win her over. But in real life, the men she met rarely resembled their digital selves. Some looked years older than their pictures, some lied about their jobs or ambitions, and some lost all charm without the safety of a keyboard. Maya confessed that she felt lonelier than ever despite the attention, because none of it translated into meaningful connection. She told Adrian, half laughing, half bitter, that social media was just a marketplace of illusions. Adrian began to see what she meant. Scrolling through feeds, he noticed how everyone polished their lives into highlight reels. Couples posted perfect vacations, never arguments. Singles posted glamorous selfies, never lonely nights. Friends tagged each other at parties, hiding the awkwardness or boredom that might have filled the rest of the evening. It wasn't that people were lying outright. It was that reality was edited, cropped, and filtered until it was unrecognizable. And in that environment, real connections felt nearly impossible. Still, hope lingered. One night, Adrian received a message from a girl named Leah. Her profile was simple, no extravagant filters or exotic locations, just a candid smile, a few photos with friends, and a bio that said she loved coffee and old movies. Their conversation flowed easily, not with exaggerated jokes, but with genuine curiosity. She asked about his favorite books, his childhood, his fears. For the first time, Adrian didn't feel like he had to perform. Days turned into weeks, and each conversation deepened his hope. They finally set a date to meet. Adrian told himself not to expect too much, not to project fantasies onto her like he had with others. Yet when Leah walked into the cafe, something felt different. She looked just like her photos, but more importantly, she carried herself with the same warmth that had come through in her messages. Their talk was awkward at moments, but it was real, and Adrian found himself laughing without rehearsing, speaking without editing. When the evening ended, she didn't unmatch him, didn't vanish. She texted him later, saying she had enjoyed the time. For the first time, Adrian felt that the distance between social media and real life had narrowed. Yet deep down, he knew this balance was fragile, that most people remained trapped in the cycle of appearances. He wondered how many were scrolling through feeds at that very moment, comparing themselves to pictures that told only half the story, yearning for love in a world where rejection was just one click away. Adrian walked home from his meeting with Leah with a lightness he had not felt in months. He replayed small moments in his head, the way she tilted her head when she laughed, the way she listened instead of waiting for her turn to speak, the ease with which silence passed between them without feeling suffocating. For the first time since he joined the app, the transition from screen to reality hadn't left him disappointed. He wanted to hold on to that, to protect it from the creeping doubts that usually followed him around. Over the next week, their conversations grew longer, spilling into late nights. Sometimes it was about silly things like which coffee flavor was overrated, other times about childhood memories, or the fears they rarely confessed to others. Adrian resisted the urge to oversell himself. He shared that he wasn't as adventurous as his photos suggested, that he often preferred staying in rather than going out. To his relief, Leah didn't seem to mind. In fact, she admitted that she often felt pressured to post cheerful photos even on days she was exhausted or lonely. Social media is like a mask, she said once. We all wear it, but sometimes I wonder if anyone remembers what's underneath. Her words stayed with him. It was rare to hear someone acknowledge the emptiness behind the glamour. Adrian began noticing it everywhere. Influencers he followed posting lavish dinners, while later confessing in live streams about burnout. Friends curating happy couple posts even when their relationships were falling apart. Acquaintances pretending success while drowning in debt. Reality rarely matched the image. Adrian and Leah met again. This time, they went for a walk in the park. It was ordinary, almost boring compared to the flashy dates he'd seen others post online, yet it felt authentic. When she tripped on a stone and laughed at herself, Adrian realized how refreshing it was to be with someone unfiltered, someone not obsessed with perfecting every angle. He wanted to believe that maybe he had found something real in a space designed for illusions. But reality had its own way of testing hope. One evening, as Adrian scrolled through his feed, he stumbled across Leah's profile tagged in a group photo. She was surrounded by friends at a party, holding a glass, her smile dazzling under neon lights. In the comments, someone had written, "Queen of the night as always." Another wrote, "Teach us how you look this perfect even after 3 drinks." Adrian felt a twinge of confusion. The Leah he saw in those photos looked different, confident, glamorous, almost like the same untouchable women who had rejected him before. He wondered if she too had 2 versions. The grounded girl who walked with him in the park and the online persona who seemed larger than life. The doubt festered quietly. He didn't bring it up, but it lingered in the back of his mind. During their next meeting, when Leah was distracted by her phone for a few minutes, Adrian caught himself wondering if she was texting one of the many admirers who flooded her comment section. He hated the insecurity, but it clawed at him anyway. Leah, on the other hand, noticed his silence. "You're quiet tonight," she said softly. "I guess I'm just thinking," Adrian replied, fumbling for the right words. He wanted to tell her about the contradiction he saw, about his fear of being just another fleeting connection in her curated life. But he couldn't bring himself to say it. Instead, he changed the topic, and she let it go, though her eyes searched his face as if she knew there was more. For a few weeks, things carried on with the same fragile rhythm. They met, they laughed, they shared small pieces of themselves. Yet each time Adrian opened his apps, he saw the shining version of Leah, the one drenched in likes, praised by strangers, admired by acquaintances. He compared himself to the men who left flattering comments, men with sharper jawlines, better clothes, and flashier lives. He started doubting if he could compete, if reality would ever be enough when social media offered her a constant stream of validation. The breaking point came unexpectedly. One night, Leah didn't reply to his texts. Hours passed. Adrian convinced himself it was nothing, but then he saw her story. She was at a concert with friends, laughing, singing, phone held high to capture the moment. It wasn't that she went out without telling him. It was that her online presence spoke to the world while her reality excluded him. The rejection wasn't direct, but it felt sharp all the same. The next morning, Leah messaged him, "Sorry, I was out late. Didn't mean to ignore you." Adrian typed back, "It's okay," but the words felt heavy. For days, the energy between them shifted. He grew quieter, she grew distant. Their texts became less frequent, their calls shorter. Finally, after one last attempt to meet that ended with her cancelling, Adrian opened the app and found her profile gone. She had unmatched him. It wasn't dramatic. There were no explanations, no harsh words, just silence, a digital disappearance that cut deeper than any shouted rejection could. Adrian stared at the empty screen, realizing how fragile it all was. One click and weeks of connection vanished, reduced to nothing. He told himself he should have expected it, that this was the pattern, people appearing larger than life online, offering glimpses of reality, then retreating back into the curated world where nothing lasted. Yet the pain didn't dull easily. He missed the sound of her laugh, the way she confessed her fears, the ordinary comfort of walking together. He also hated himself for scrolling back through her old posts, torturing himself with the version of her that remained forever smiling, forever untouchable. Maya noticed his withdrawal. One evening, she came over with snacks and asked him directly what had happened. Adrian told her everything, the dates, the hope, the slow unraveling, the silent rejection. She listened without interruption, then sighed. "I wish I could say it gets easier," she said. "But it doesn't. Social media makes rejection feel worse, because you still see the person everywhere. You see them living, smiling, moving on without you. In the old days, you just didn't cross paths again. Now it's like the wound keeps reopening every time you scroll." Her words rang true. Adrian had seen it not just with Leah, but with others before her. The ghosting, the unmatched notifications, the silent disappearances, each one left traces online that lingered long after the connection was gone. It wasn't just about rejection anymore. It was about being reminded of it every day, in every post, in every highlight reel. Still, part of him wondered if he should keep trying. He opened the app again, swiping through endless profiles. Each smiling face came with possibilities, with promises of something new. Yet beneath it all, he carried the weight of disappointment, the knowledge that reality often failed to live up to the story told online. Adrian promised himself he would delete the app after Leah. He said it out loud one night, staring at his phone like it was a toxic habit he couldn't quit. But promises made in loneliness are fragile, and within a week, he was swiping again. Every match brought back the same tiny spark of possibility, like a gambler pulling a lever, convinced the next spin might be different. This time he matched with Sophia, a girl whose profile was full of aesthetic photos, books beside cups of latte, sunsets by the river, quotes about love and destiny. She seemed thoughtful, deeper than the others. Their chats were warm, and Sophia often said things like, "I feel like we've known each other forever," words that Adrian both cherished and doubted. They agreed to meet quickly, before the illusion had too much time to build. The night of their date, Adrian waited nervously outside the restaurant. When Sophia arrived, he recognized her instantly, but the reality again carried small surprises. She was shorter than he had imagined, her voice higher, her mannerisms slightly rehearsed. She smiled a lot, maybe too much, as if conscious of being watched. Still, Adrian enjoyed her company. They talked about books, about dreams of traveling. But halfway through the meal, Sophia excused herself to check her phone. She stayed gone for 10 minutes, and when she returned, she was distracted, glancing at her screen every few minutes. Later, as they said goodbye, She gave him a quick hug and promised to text. She never did. By morning, her profile was gone. Adrian sat on his couch staring at the blank chat window. He wasn't even angry anymore, just numb. The cycle repeated with ruthless consistency: glowing profiles, hopeful conversations, short-lived meetings, vanishing without explanation. Each rejection blurred into the next until it became less about the individual women and more about the crushing realization that everyone was searching, but no one seemed capable of staying. He started noticing the same patterns outside of dating. His own friends, people he'd known for years, curated their lives into fragments that made him feel inadequate. He saw engagement announcements from couples who fought constantly in private. He saw job promotions from friends who had secretly complained about hating their work. He saw endless photos of vacations that were more about proving happiness than experiencing it. Every scroll was a performance, and Adrian couldn't help wondering if anyone ever showed their real selves anymore. One night, overwhelmed by the noise of it all, Adrian deleted every dating app and logged out of his social media accounts. The silence that followed was uncomfortable at first, like withdrawal from an addiction. Without the constant stream of notifications, his evenings felt empty. He realized how dependent he had become on validation, how much of his self-worth was tied to likes, matches, and fleeting messages. In that silence, though, something unexpected happened. He started noticing the world around him again. The way the barista at his local cafe remembered his order. The neighbor who nodded each morning with a quiet smile. The old bookstore down the street, where the owner still recommended novels with genuine enthusiasm. These were small, ordinary interactions, unfiltered, unrecorded, unnoticed by the wider world, but real. Weeks passed. Adrian didn't expect romance anymore, but he felt lighter. One Saturday afternoon, he decided to spend a few hours at the park with a book. As he sat under a tree, he heard a familiar voice. It was Maya. She dropped down beside him, carrying 2 cups of iced coffee. "You've been hiding," she teased. "Maybe," Adrian admitted. "Just needed a break from everything." They talked for hours, slipping easily between jokes and deeper conversations. Maya admitted she had also taken a step back from the apps. "It's exhausting," she said. "All that swiping, all those half-conversations. I realized I was spending more time editing photos than actually living." Adrian laughed, recognizing himself in her words. "Feels like we're all actors in a play no one really enjoys." As the sun dipped lower, their conversation grew softer. They reminisced about old memories, about the times they'd helped each other through heartbreaks. Adrian suddenly realized how natural it felt to be with Maya, how unperformed. She wasn't filtered through a screen, wasn't vanishing after a single night. She was here, beside him, sharing real coffee, real laughter, real silence. For the first time, Adrian wondered if maybe what he had been searching for online had been nearby all along. Not in glossy photos or clever bias, but in the friend who had seen his awkwardness, his insecurities, his rejections, and stayed anyway. Over the next few weeks, their friendship shifted in subtle ways. Longer conversations, lingering goodbyes, a hand brushing against his and not pulling away. It wasn't sudden or dramatic, nothing like the whirlwind romances promised on apps. It was slow, steady, grounded. When Maya finally leaned against his shoulder during a late-night walk, Adrian felt a sense of peace he hadn't known before. It wasn't perfect. They still had disagreements, still faced insecurities, but it was real. And that, Adrian realized, was what had been missing all along. Months later, when he occasionally reactivated his old accounts, he saw the same endless parade of curated lives. Couples smiling, singles posing, influencers selling illusions. But it no longer pulled him in. He no longer measured himself against filtered images, or sought validation from strangers. He had something far quieter, far less glamorous, but infinitely more valuable. Adrian finally understood that social media had never been the enemy. It was only a mirror reflecting what people wanted the world to believe. Real life, messy and imperfect, existed outside those screens, in the laughter of friends, in the sting of rejection, and in the fragile, beautiful connections that survived despite it all. He put his phone away, turned to Maya, and smiled. For once, he didn't feel like he had to edit the moment. Reality was enough.